That takes into account a melange between the work I am doing as a Minister of Defense and also in the Ministry of Labor and Social Security and Services. And I want to thank my dear friend and colleague, Professor Dr. Monica Juma, for her excellent intervention and the way in which she was able to bring to the fore a number of issues that we need to start talking about. I'm not going to talk about KDF in Somalia. I'm going to talk about defense and what defense means within the context of our country where it is now. And I think we need to start to ask iconoclastic questions about defense. For many of us, defense means the military. It means Kenya's engagements in Somalia. It is about, how much territory we have captured, to what extent have we managed to dismantle Al-Shabaab and the rest of the terrorist threats in that country. I think defense is a much bigger space than that. For me, having dealt with issues regarding families, issues regarding societies over the last 3 or 4 weeks in the Ministry of Labor, it got me thinking that defense starts with the family. That's where it starts, because especially defense against terrorism. Because terrorism, from the very beginning, is a war of the mind. It's a war of ideas. It's a war of values. And where are those values first implanted? They're first implanted in our families. So a critical cog in the war against terror, a critical cog in the counter-terrorism strategy must be about what is happening with our families. Whether our families are able to articulate the values of the new Kenya, whether our families are able to articulate the idea of the value system that is created in our institutions, whether in our families we learn the principles that are set out in Article 10 of the Constitution, whether our families have the capacity to do that. I think a country without a strong value system cannot fight terror. Simple as that. We need to understand what we mean by the new Kenya. We need to understand the value of that Kenya. We need to believe in the idea of Kenya and the way Kenya will be perceived in the future. Because what does the terrorist wish to do? The terrorist wishes to create for us a new reality. It wants us to question our Kenyanness. It wants us to question those values in the Constitution that talk about integration, that talk about equality, that talk about human rights, women's inclusion. It wants to say that those things are not good enough, and there's another reality that's better. Unless we're able to stand up to the idea of our country, its beauty, its promise, then we cannot stand up against ideologies that question the very center of who we are. So in this idea of defending Kenya, we must begin at the bottom. We must begin with our families. We must begin within our communities, in our schools. We must think about defense as civil defense as well, and not think that we will fight this war and win it through the security forces only. So my message is this: what is happening in our families? Let's interrogate that. My message is, why is it that in the midst of a terrorist attack, we do not converge around a value? We do not converge around principles. If you look at the reaction of the people of France to the attack on Charlie Hebdo, their immediate reaction was to rally against Republican values first. In our country, because our value system is weak, we go back to the things that divide us. We start talking marginalization. We start talking about profiling. We start talking about historical injustices. We are taken back and we begin to fight against each other. And our main target is our security systems. We begin to criticize them, to break them down. What we need to do is to be able to build such a strong sense of Kenya, such a strong sense of who we are, that any attack against that very idea of who we are is enough to rally us, make us strong enough to stand up for who we are and to stand up against those who wish to destroy our country through the power of ideas that are beginning to make us question who we are. So that's my message to you.